Welcome to Brain Lady Speaks with Julie Anderson. Julie Brain Lady Anderson is considered to be one of the nation's top experts on the brain-personality connection. She has been inspiring her audiences to fire up their brains and ignite positive changes in their relationships. And now she is here to bring that knowledge to you. The information she shares will help those who hear it to accelerate their success in life and business through the discovery of their natural gifts and maximizing their brain power. When you learn to tap into the potential of your natural gifts and the power of the brain-mind connection, there is no limit to what you can accomplish. Today and every Wednesday on Brain Lady Speaks, you'll explore the latest findings to see how they have practical application in your life. And now, get ready to join Julie Anderson on the Brain Lady Speaks radio show. Take it away, Julie.
Welcome to the Brain Lady Speaks podcast. I am very happy to be here with another dynamic guest and a wonderful interview. Such a neat topic. So I am here. Let me first welcome Tanya Cole-Lesnick to the Brain Lady Speaks. Welcome, Tanya.
Thank you, Julie. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yeah, super fun. We're going to have a great conversation. Now, I'm going to read for the audience your professional bio, and then we'll just have a conversation and talk about the different ways that it's important for us to remove the clutter in all areas of our life, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Tanya Cole-Lesnick has been a psychotherapist, licensed clinical social worker, and coach since 1995. She received her master's degree in social work from New York University after group therapy changed her life. So she has a personal experience in that. She has extensive experience in outpatient hospital mental health, private practice, and wellness center settings. From those experiences over the years, she has identified her most important focus, helping people to clear energetic clutter so they can focus on what matters most to them. She does this by helping clients to access and honor their truth, to change habits that don't serve them, and to heal faulty narratives so that they are living in alignment inside and out. Her work revolves around the combination of intimate therapeutic groups and individual sessions, as the sharing of the inner world and and being human together in a safe space, collectively and individually, is an incredibly powerful combination that leads to lasting transformation. So once again, welcome to the Brain Lady Speak Show, Tanya.
Thank you.
Take off my glasses so people don't see all the reflections, but I need them to read. I am really, this is a really neat topic. Recently, I just completed and have a certificate as a brain health professional. And it's so interesting, that connection between the mind and the brain and the physical health and the brain health and the mind health. And it's just this, this trifecta of things that if they're not all in balance, then everything is out. If one is out of balance, then everything's a mess. So I think it's really a neat topic to discuss. But I always like to ask people, and I'm not, two things right off. I don't want to make you uncomfortable with any questions that I might ask. So if there's things that you don't want to share, that's fine. We'll honor that. And two, for anyone listening, I want you to make sure that if there's a little something emotional that gets you, or you think that you really need to reach out for help, or you've got mental health is so important. Depression issues are so important to get addressed. See if there's anything here that you hear today, either reach out to Tanya, reach out to a mental health professional, or if you're already under the care of someone, before you make any adjustments in your current program, be sure to check with the person whose care you're under, just so that we don't we don't want you to hear anything on the Brain Lady Speaks and go, okay, I'm going off on my medication. I just want to make sure we cover that. But Tanya, tell me a little bit about what brought you here. So you obviously have a personal experience, and this is social work is not for the faint of heart at all. So what kind of led you to that point in your life?
Yeah. I'm happy to tell that story. This was more than 30 years ago. I was in my mid 20s and I was really struggling to have a long term love relationship. And at the time, I felt a lot of stigma connected to therapy. I also was very dismissive of my issues and didn't feel like they were legitimate enough to pursue therapy. So for a while, I just kind of suffered really, feeling confused about why I wasn't able to have a more long-term love relationship. I wasn't sure what was in the way. And finally, it became painful enough that I just took a chance anyway and decided to pursue therapy. So I got a few names and I connected to a wonderful therapist named Bonnie. And right away, I felt very emotionally safe speaking to her, sharing what was going on with me. I felt very supported. And she very early on suggested I add group therapy to the mix. And so the thought of that terrified me. I was really not sure I wanted to do that, but I was starting to develop some trust with Bonnie, and she thought it would be helpful. And I was kind of intrigued. So I decided to do it. And it was in really the combination of both having Bonnie to kind of process things with, but going into this group situation where we were sharing our inner worlds with each other, it helped me learn so much about I'm not alone. I was realizing that I was human and not flawed because I went into that situation thinking, well, there must be something unlovable about me. That must be
Mhm,
what explains
mhm.
why I wasn't able to have the relationship that I had longed for. And in that process, I was able to get much more comfortable in my own skin, much less harsh with myself. And I was uh, I think showed up differently because prior to then I used to curate how I showed up with people. And at that point, I was just more present, more allowing things to unfold. And pretty early on, I was dating during that time and I met the man who eventually became my husband. And he and I just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary. Yeah. And so thank you. We have two amazing daughters. And so, what I had longed for, what I really wanted for myself, I was able to pretty early on move in that direction. But the part I didn't anticipate was that I really started to connect to myself in a much deeper way. I felt much more compassion towards myself. I learned about needs. I learned how to love myself. I mean, there was a lot of other things that grew out of that experience that I wasn't even going for. I didn't realize that that was in store for me if I were to connect to myself in those ways. And so it was from really that I don't remember if I mentioned I was a graphic designer at the time. So I decided to go back to school and change my career, and I got my master's in social work at that time and been doing that work ever since, always loving group and as a way for people to really touch on some deep things that even though I think individual work is great as well, I think there's something from group work that can just be more helpful in terms
Mhm.
of learning about yourself.
Yeah. And, I have to throw in there as, the brain lady, right, is the benefits actually to your DNA. Now, I know this sounds crazy. Let's see if I can make a very Reader's Digest version of this. And, some of the listeners may have already heard me say this on a previous pod, but when they had did a very interesting study out of the Bay Area in California, and it was regarding women who were caring for uh, strongly developmentally disabled children who took a lot of emotional and physical care. And when they measured their telomeres, which is the telomere is what protects the edge of your DNA strand and helps to keep your DNA, your chromosomes actually that it
Mm.
and help it keep it healthy, right? And theirs was deteriorating 2.5 times faster so than the average person because of the additional stress that they were under.
Mhm.
And they took that group and they put them, those women, those individual women, and they put them into a group. And there wasn't any agenda with the group, the group was just literally there to support each other.
Mm.
And across the board, everyone in each of those women developed or had their telomerase, which counteracts the deterioration, right?
Mhm.
It actually helps to protect those or keep your telomeres stronger. That increased in their body. It actually increased
Wow.
every single one. So being in that group setting, so for those listening, if this is something you've thought about, you've got the personal experience that Tanya's sharing, but now you've also got scientific, documentation that it's good, it's healthy for us. We are, I tell people all the time, we're herd animals at our core.
Mm.
We're herd animals, right?
Yeah,
We
I
need
love
people.
that though, that
Yeah.
that brain part.
Yeah, it's very fascinating, fascinating, fascinating. So great, very cool story. And I love to hear, I always like hearing the background of my guests because it just helps the listeners, helps me to appreciate you even more as an individual to where you've come at this point in your life. Now, you talk about when you teach, and I'm sure this is a lot of what you do in your groups and one-to-one, is this energetic clutter. And tell us a little bit, define that for us, and then help us to know why it's so important to clear that energetic clutter. So kind of define it, and then why is it important to get rid of it?
Yeah, yeah. So energetic clutter actually is such a newer, um, really wording that I've been working on because I actually started here's another quick story, and then I'll define it. I started to work with a minimalist because there were some things I wanted to sort through in my home. You wouldn't necessarily think my home was cluttered, but I know that there are drawers and closets and things where I haven't looked at stuff in there for a really long time and kind of long to just clear that space. And so I started to work with her and realized that I couldn't even get to some of the physical stuff because the way I was thinking about time was kind of filling me up. I had this idea of like work first. And even though I've been a therapist for a long time and I've been working on finding balance in my own life always, I mean, it's just an ongoing thing that I'm always paying attention to as well because I'm human too. I realized that I had some limiting beliefs that were keeping me very stuck in this I'm in a newer business right now. I must really work in this very frenzied pace to get to where I want to go with my goals and all of that. And so that's how the term even came up for me because I realized that energetically, we can hold on to things that completely deplete us. And so if we're not careful, we're in this kind of um, vicious cycle of going through our days, wanting more, wanting something different, getting depleted. And I'll say a little bit about what those things are. And then starting all over again the next day, feeling very frustrated that, we're not getting to some of the places that we want to get in our lives. And so, really, energetic clutter, my definition, those are all the things that demand our focus and attention, our time, our energy, but they're not helping us move the needle towards
Mm.
growth or how we want to feel in our lives. And
Yeah.
so those are things like the idea I have to make fresh baked goods for my kids' class, and that's the only way I can show up. And I have to take care of everybody else before I take care of myself. Or for me, I am always a recovering people pleaser. And I had the limiting belief that I was going to be rejected if I prioritized myself. And so that those kinds of things, limiting beliefs, different conditioning that we've had from childhood, different ideas, different patterns can be very depleting and not honoring who we are, what we want in our lives, what we would choose for ourselves. And then they get in the way of us really being able to connect to the lives that speak to us, that light us up.
Yeah, interesting. That this causing the distraction and the procrastination, and then all those feelings. Yeah, definitely. So how is it that we can move forward? Like you said, if you can just move the needle a little bit, what are how do you do that? Like, what's some of the
Mm,
ways that you do that so that you can first recognize it, just recognize what it is in you and your life, and then start making some progress to get a take care
yeah.
of that.
Yeah. I think probably the best way to start recognizing some of this stuff is the pain points. Where are you perhaps feeling resentful? Well, usually when we're feeling resentful, it's because we're saying yes to things we don't want to be saying yes to. So if we can notice, oh, I'm resentful in all these different places, that's a good place to start. I talk to people a lot about tracking some things. If you're irritable a lot of the time, what's that about? If you're feeling exhausted all the time, what's that about? So starting to look at some of these pain points and see whether or not by tracking you can get a better understanding of some of the patterns. So sometimes it is something like, oh, I realize I have this limiting belief, like what I was saying earlier. So, the limiting belief that I explained for me with the people pleasing is that I'm going to be rejected if I don't do these things. So that kind of thing. Or um, we certainly celebrate workaholism in our culture, and the moms who just do it all, they're so amazing. And so there's a lot of these ideas that people feel like maybe their worth is connected to them doing all this stuff. And so to pay attention to, well, what is some of the messaging underneath these patterns in your life? So, first, finding the pain points. Second, starting to get a better understanding what some of the messaging. Now, I'm saying messaging, it could also be not honoring your own energy levels. If you're somebody who really does well in the morning, but you're saving certain tasks for later in the day when you're really feeling too tired to focus on things in that way, that also could be a way of keeping yourself engaged in this pattern of just feeling tired and not really honoring your energy levels. So that's another thing. So starting to learn your patterns, figuring out a little piece of what you might need. So you might not know it all, but you might know, okay, I need to say no to this uh I don't know, charity event that I realize I don't want to go to. It's bad timing, whatever it is. And for the first time, say no to something where in the past you might have said yes to. So it's starting to choose different steps to take and to know that it's going to be hard. This is out of my comfort zone. This is going against what I've done my whole life. My identity is caught in this. And yet I still recognize if I keep going this way, it's not going to bring me to what I want in my life. And so it's getting that level of
Yeah,
understanding and then starting to take those little steps.
little steps. I like that. Awareness is always one of the first things that I tell people, whether it's brain health, business health, relationships, whatever it is, mindset work. It's all about being aware,
Yeah.
because we never see the forest for the trees. Either
Yeah.
we don't see the things that are there. And oftentimes, if they're, like you said, if they're connected to a pain point,
Mhm.
our brain is gonna, our subconscious is gonna deliberately try to protect that, because it's supposed to protect you.
That's
That's
right.
what it's supposed to do,
Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
pushing you away. So the awareness is a big deal. Now, you work with, and we've talked a little bit about the groups and the group therapy and what it did for you. Pardon me, the power of it. But what, from your experience
Mhm.
and working with your clients, what makes therapeutic groups so successful or a powerful tool for this transformation?
There's so many different layers to it. So Definitely learning that you're not alone. I think that's the experience that I had about not being alone, and I think we talked about that with the group that you were discussing as well, and knowing you're not alone is huge. Realizing you're not flawed and that we can all relate to each other is huge. A lot of what I do in my groups is after each person has had a chance to share some of what goes on with them, and I pick topics for each group session that grow out of each group session. So there are things like energy, what depletes you, what replenishes you, that kind of thing. And so as people are talking, they're sharing their own experience, but then we kind of talk again about, well, what's resonating for you as you're hearing each other talk. And so we can get even deeper about where we overlap with each other. So not being alone, but on a very deep level, like some of the stuff that maybe you felt people in group might feel that they're doing a worse job than the rest of the world is often something that people talk about, and realizing that they all kind of have the same or very similar worries, and that can be very reassuring. There's an accountability piece. So when people know that we're going to come back together and they know that they're going to have an opportunity to let the other people in the group know that they were able to follow through with something that they've been talking about, I think that that can really help people take some of these ideas and put it into action. There's a real celebrating of each other that happens all the time, that we see these little incremental steps, but we see how huge they all are. I mean, I think, you were talking about how the brain keeps us safe. This stuff can be really scary, even when it's little tiny things, but it's huge and we get it because of the way that we talk about those things. So there's a real celebrating each other that happens in group that I think is very special.
I love that. I love that. That support, yeah, it's a wonderful way to go through the self-discovery without some pain. Well, maybe it's got the pain, but you've got a support system there to help you through it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so important, so important. And you have the case studies to prove it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, why is you mentioned to the alignment piece
Mhm.
in what you've talked about a little bit. So, why is living in alignment inside and out
Mhm.
so important? And then how do you do that? Like, how do you even know that you're out of alignment? Like, what are some of the things that will say, "Ooh, first, and break this into three parts." So, first, why is living in alignment so important? Part B, how do you know that you're living out of alignment? And then C, what do you do with it?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
That's a big one.
yeah. So living in alignment is important really for certainly for life satisfaction. I mean, alignment means, to me anyway, it means checking in with your intuition and your heart, knowing what feels like from a gut level, what feels right to you. So it's like it's not the thinking mind necessarily, although that can be part of it too. But there's a real checking in and what's your gut telling you. And it goes back to this energetic clutter idea, because when we're out of alignment, and let me just sort of talk that through a little bit. So if we're out of alignment, then we've got a lot of mental chatter that starts to happen about maybe we're doing something we don't feel great about, or we're doing something that we're not interested in. We're bored with it, but we're saying yes because we think we should do it. And so then our minds engage with thoughts like, "Ugh, when is this going to be over? I really wish I didn't say yes to this thing. I don't want to be here." That kind of thing. So we're not present. We're not able to really fully connect to anybody from that place. And there a lot of energy is going towards being dissatisfied with whatever it is that we are doing in that moment. Whereas there's much more flow when we're in alignment. There's much more flow with we're connecting to something that we really believe trust matters to us, and we're in that space and we're more able to be present, and there's more life satisfaction from that because we're have chosen that. So I think it's really important from that place to be satisfied with our lives, but also to have a certain level of flow as we're living our lives, presence and flow. Then the second question was, how do you know when you're out of alignment, right? How do you know when you're out of alignment?
Yep. Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I think if for all of us, if we can have a relationship with ourselves and with checking in with ourselves, that's helpful, because if you don't check in with yourself, you're probably not going to have as much of a clue when you're out of alignment. But yeah, so it's paying attention to things like irritability, paying attention to things like um yeah, exhaustion, or being bored, being disconnected, are you present, that kind of thing. And checking in with yourself, are you on track with some of those things? And it can change. It can change as we grow and evolve. I'll give you an example from my life. I mentioned that I used to be a graphic designer, and what I did in my life is I finished being a graphic designer and I started being a therapist and coach, and I really didn't stay connected to some of that creative part of myself. And that's something that I've come back to more recently, because I was missing it. It was out of alignment for me to not stay connected to some of that creative stuff that I really love about just being able to be engaged in something that speaks to me. So that's an example from my own life of recognizing, oh, that's missing. And so it's in the process of checking in with ourselves and noticing if there's something that feels missing, or if there's some longing that you notice that you keep thinking about, but you're not moving towards it. That can be an example of that. Or feeling like, I feel like I'm much happier when I move at a very slow, meandering kind of, not meandering, but a slow pace where I can flow with things. And if I'm moving too quickly, I'm not feeling comfortable in my own skin. So that's another example from my own life, but for all of us to learn, what are your rhythms, that kind of thing. And then once you've identified where you're out of alignment, what alignment might look like, then it's a trial and error, just starting to take little steps, see how it feels. A lot of clarity comes from engagement. So it's in the doing of some of these things that helps us to get more clear about what is a good fit for us, what feels like it's connecting to our hearts, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love so many of the things you said. One of the things that I tell some of the clients that I work with is, if you notice yourself kind of pulling inward and not doing the things that you used to do, you're spending more time at home, you're more comfortable being alone than what you used to be, you're kind of isolating yourself. Those are all things that say it's almost like your brain's early warning system telling you, from your perspective, from the topic, telling you you're out of alignment, telling you
Mhm.
there's something going on in your life that's causing too much stress, and so your brain's trying to protect you. And if you've been doing this for long periods of time, then you're out of that alignment.
Mhm.
So I like that self-reflection. Again, it goes back to the awareness piece we talked about
Mm,
earlier.
yeah.
Doing that self-respect reflection and going, what did I used to do that brought me a lot of joy that maybe I'd still like to do, but I'm not doing it, and why?
Mhm.
What's doing
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that. I really like those those pieces. And again, that's one of the things with the group that I can see you're working with groups and working with your clients as groups. They can kind of help pull that out, right? Because
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
we don't really know it ourselves. So why is it important? Another question that we have to ask you is, why is it important for us to understand the layers of being human? I mean, that's an interesting question.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, because I think some of this stuff could almost seem like it's a form of energetic clutter because maybe it takes a lot of energy from us or it's hard, that kind of thing. So, for example, starting to set a boundary. If you haven't set a boundary before and you realize that you need to say no to somebody who's maybe been taking advantage of your good nature. Yeah. Yeah. And so starting to say no to that and realize, oh, that takes a lot of energy. That's really hard. But that energy is going to help us towards growth. And if we know the difference and we know, yes, this is hard and yes, this takes a lot of energy, but it's going to help us grow. And then as we start to grow in certain places and we strengthen some of those muscles, it's going to start to flow more easily. But knowing that some of this is part of the process, some of this is part of being human can help us not push against it so much. I think it can help us be more accepting of what is just part of the process so that we don't spend a lot of time fighting against it. And we can also honor the energy that it takes as we work with it.
Sorry, I have a little bit of a cough, so I keep turning the mic off. So I apologize for that
Yeah,
delay there.
no worries.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Um, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but there is a discomfort, and you even say a vulnerability,
Mm.
right? So this is gonna push some people because it's uncomfortable. They might say, "Oh, I don't wanna do this. Oh, this must not be working. This must not be working because I'm uncomfortable, so it's not right, and I shouldn't be uncomfortable." What do you say about that? Why is that actually a positive thing and important to go through, an important step to go through in this entire process
Yeah.
of transformation?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny in a way because when people are touching against vulnerability and they're feeling like, "Oh, this is so uncomfortable," I tend to wanna celebrate that because I know that they're touching on something really potent, and by getting in there and really touching it, they're kinda loosening it up. It won't have as tight a grip, and that is part of where transformation lies, is being able to be vulnerable, in various ways. Sometimes it's vulnerable with a therapist or a coach, sometimes it's being vulnerable with somebody in your life, in your life outside of support. And sometimes it's a group situation or even getting honest with yourself. But it's really allowing yourself to go to some of these places that, like what we were talking about earlier with the protective part of the brain kind of jumping in. And of course, this is your department. So I'm sure I'm not going to say it as well as you, but I just know like the brain protects us from things that feel unsafe. And so if we go into something that feels unsafe, something we're feeling vulnerable about, then it's gonna kick stuff up. It for sure kicks stuff up, but if we can trust that that's an old messaging, if that's something that we are actually safe, then that's part of our journey through it, is to help us know, yes, this is a tender spot, and I'm gonna go through it anyway because I believe that this is holding me back. And so again, that awareness.
Yep, absolutely. Probably a great way to view it is look at it like exercise, like physical exercise. it is, in order to really make progress, you're going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? I tell everybody exercise is a non-negotiable in my life, right? It is for brain health. That is one of the best things you can do for your whole body, right? But getting on an elliptical and sweating for 40 minutes isn't necessarily comfortable,
No.
right? And you may feel really great afterwards because it creates those endorphins, but actually going through the process of the physical exercise can be exhausting. It can also be painful in the following days if you're sore because you added a new routine or something. But the end result is hugely beneficial,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hugely beneficial. I love this. We could go on talking and talking, I'm sure, and cover so much in this arena, because it's just it's so important. And there's so many things that each point that we covered, we could spend an entire podcast just focusing on that
Yeah.
point. So maybe we'll have to think about bringing you back, Tanya, onto the Brain Lady Speak show
Oh,
again.
I love that.
But I do want to. I would love that. I would love it as well. I would like to incorporate, or would like to let people know how they can best get in touch with you. So we're going to pop some of these up, and I'll also say it on for those who are just listening on the podcast. She is Tanya at Tanya Cole-Lesnick.com. So it will be in the show notes. I'm not going to spell it out because hopefully, I mean, if you're listening to the podcast, you're probably driving or something like that. Check out the show page, Tanya Cole, or watch it up on the YouTube channel. Tanya Cole-Lesnick.com. She also gave us a phone number, 917-846-9229, where you can call and reach out, and I'm sure set up an appointment to talk with her. She also has an amazing offer where you can schedule a time to do a discovery session with that. Let's see, what is it? Clearenergeticclutter.com. You can go there and click the buttons to set up a time to work with Tanya some more, and get a consultation on what that would look like. And you could also follow her on Instagram and TikTok, which I think is wonderful. You also have accessible on your website a free 7-minute masterclass. 7-minute masterclass. Ooh, I might have to do that. Like, you can accomplish something in 7 minutes. That's awesome. Tell us real question. It says that you asked 3 questions, and those questions can be very transformational. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll tell you the cheat sheet of the questions themselves, but the 7-minute masterclass talks about some of the nuance. So I think the masterclass is helpful for that, but really it's to ask yourself at the end of each day, so it's in real time. It's not just this big grand question, what do you want less of? But it's, what do you want less of? What do you want more of? And as you look at your day that just passed, so that you can get it into real time, and then how can you honor each of those things, and to really bring a relationship between the action piece and the understanding, the awareness, and to really put both of those together, so that, because the action is going to help us move through things, it's going to help us get more clear, and it's going to help us have that awareness, because until we also know what certain things feel like in our bodies, we're not always as sure with just thinking our way through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful advice. So I encourage all of my listeners to connect with Tanya. If anything, if you're curious, just follow her on social media. Give her some social media love, and yeah, connect and follow her and glean her little bits of wisdom. Thank you so much, Tanya, for being on the Brain Lady Speaks podcast, and we'll have to schedule to have you back so we can do a deeper dive in one of these topics, because I think that would be fascinating.
Thank you, Julie. I really love talking with you, and I love the idea of, a deeper dive as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you. And for our listeners, we would love to have you stay in touch with us. There's all kinds of ways that you can follow the Brain Lady me on pretty much all of the different socials. It's at Brain Lady Julie. So Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I think Twitter I'm just at Brain Lady, but Facebook it's Brain Lady Julie. Lots of different things. I'm a little bit of a silly person, so sometimes you'll see me post something a little silly, but that's what it's all about is having that humor and enjoying life. That is what we want to do. If you would like more information about the Brain Lady Speaks podcast, I will ask a favor of the listeners. There are so many, we are on YouTube, and there are so many individuals who could hear this, who need to hear this message. So if you give us a thumbs up, if you put a couple mentions in the comments, that's going to do that algorithm thing. Like that is not my area of expertise, but but I hear this all the time. You know, if you get the interaction, it gets it shown to more people. So it can be a resource for more individuals to be able to apply this wisdom or hear something on the program that would help them to make positive moves in their life. So show us all a little social media love. Stay connected with me if you have any questions about being on the Brain Lady Speak. Send an email to Kelli at brainladyspeaker.com. If you're interested in having me, that's Kelli spelled with an I, by the way, Kelli. If you're interested in having me come speak for your organization or for your group, let me know. Reach out to Kelli again, and she will handle that for you. Thank you so very much once again for being here, Tanya. Thank you so much, listeners, for being here. I am blessed, feel blessed that you have spent this time with us. So until next week, I would really like for everyone, take a nice deep breath, roll those shoulders back, go out, get a breath of fresh air, and simply enjoy every moment.